Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are. I'm just going to be kind of messing around with this as we're talking here. But I think it's rolling. I just need to get it flipped around here. I was kind of curious if I could get it show my screen on this. I haven't really messed around with it. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm ready. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, my first question for you is, how did you get into all of this? Because like I said, for me, I stumbled across your Twitter feed and I was just blown away by, it's not like you're just sharing opinions. Like, you have videos and evidence and proof and facts and links, and it's just so informative. It's like a total wormhole into this whole world of this stuff.
Yeah. So, great question. And I was trying to think about that. I've tried to think about that myself multiple times. I guess it was just kind of a process. Um, I guess for me, there's probably a lot of people, maybe even in this space, that kind of figured out that there was something crazy going on. Maybe even before I did. I didn't really start hitting me that something was going. Like, speaking of our current situation, kind of with COVID and everything, um, it didn't really hit me until kind of more towards the late summer of 2020, and when I really started hearing about the Great Reset with the World Economic Forum, and right off the bat, I mean, that's just a wild name, right? The Great Reset, talking about resetting the whole world with kind of updating all of our systems and instituting, just this whole new world, and new narrative, all of that, as we've seen, all that's coming out recently as well. But in 2020, summer 2020 is kind of when I started paying attention to the World Economic Forum, and that just kind of led me down that rabbit hole of, they're obviously involved in the economic aspect of the global system, but they're obviously involved in just about every other aspect of the world as well. And so technology is a huge aspect of what they do. And so I just kind of started paying attention to what, kind of what they were talking about. Started just trying to find as many videos as I could, checking on YouTube, checking on their website. I mean, there's just so many things available. And as you just kind of start digging and looking into, the technology that they're talking about, the fourth industrial revolution is bringing upon us, any common person, I think that some red flags go off. And so, it was just kind of a slow process, I guess I would say, is really kind of digging into, Schwab and the World Economic Forum, and just kind of seeing how powerful they were, and just this massive, um, organization full of that's funded by, over 1,000 global corporations, the major global corporations around the world. And, so just red flags just started going off immediately. Here they are talking about this great reset, that COVID's given us this opportunity to reset the whole world. And, just that's when things started clicking, and I just started digging, just kept digging. And it's kind of led me to where we are now, and I've kind of, I see now that that this transhumanist philosophy is definitely a lot more pervasive than I thought it was. It's not just kind of it is still kind of fringe, but it's definitely pretty pervasive in the elite community, at least in my opinion, from my perspective. But
yeah, it really appears to be. And could you just give us a quick breakdown of your knowledge in what transhumanism is? Because it's a new concept, or at least for myself personally. I'm sure it's been around. Like, I shared that one video with you that kind of touched on it in the 70s, where it was trying to break down these concepts of transhumanism. So it's been around, but like you were saying, these elites, these people at the very top, people who are very wealthy, who have a lot of power, they're interested in it. So could you just break it down for us real quick? In your opinion, what is transhumanism?
Yeah. So transhumanism is just there's probably different understandings of it even amongst the people that that follow it or kind of believe in it or to however you want to describe it. Just like there is with any kind of religion or belief system, there's lots of different ideas and kind of I don't want to call it denominations, but just to give an example. So there's probably different people kind of may have a slightly different views on it, but it's definitely at the very least the genetically modifying your body. That's definitely one aspect of transhumanism, is being able to go in and manipulate your genetic code and to fit certain whatever you want it to do. Obviously can be used for good in many ways, and so that's where it kind of gets interesting, is that the health aspect of things. Like if we could eliminate certain genetic diseases, I mean that sounds pretty amazing, right? I don't want, but getting back to what is transhumanism, sorry, it is just basically the enhancement of our bodies, with technology. And so whether that is this new CRISPR tech, Cas9 technology that allows us to edit our DNA, and or if it is actually embedding technology inside of our bodies. So there, different people that I've actually had a discussion with a guy that goes to the World Economic Forum. He was responding. He was calling out one of my posts about his book, saying that I was spreading misinformation about his book. But he wrote a book called The Transhuman Code, and he's talked at the World Economic Forum. He's the one that he talked to the Vatican. I've done a thread on that as well. And he was basically saying that he doesn't believe in he's not a transhumanist. But that he views that we're going to just continue to evolve. Like again, I didn't have a full on discussion with him, so I don't know exactly what he would. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he was kind of taking the stance that we're just technology as it advances is going to continue to advance us as it has already. We have the power of technology at our fingertips. Here we are speaking to each other, from different parts of the United States. I mean, it's amazing. But we have the power of technology at our fingertips. And so he was just kind of saying that, that just even the advancement of what we know as technology now is just going to continue to advance the human being. So I think they would all kind of have maybe different, understandings of what transhumanism is, but there's a very, large percentage of them that do believe and want to embed themselves with, technology, enhance themselves with it, and genetically modify themselves as well. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I encourage anyone on here who doesn't follow Peasant Journalist to go look at his threads, look at his videos, follow him, because, it's so interesting how, for example, the World Economic Forum or whatever, World Health Organization, or all of these different big corporate entities that think that they can run the world. It's interesting how they package their content, and it really, if you are a person that believes that people in this world are innately good and, everything ends up working out for the best, you can really buy into their selling points, because like you were saying, it's like it's going to better your health and it's going to affect the world in such a great way. And, it's this utopian ideology that's really being pushed when they're showing their ads or, their latest YouTube video or whatever it is, And it's interesting to me that some people it's like a personality difference, right? Some people are a little more cautious when it comes to information coming out, and some people are a little bit more accepting, you know? And so for you, you were saying that there was just red flags going off, you know? And I'm wondering if you could go into that a little bit more, you know, because it does seem like this beautiful utopian world. We can work, you know, merge technology with humans. Um, what do you see as some of the potentials in that, and then some things that may be limiting or destructive to humanity as a whole?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that, you know, obviously the number one concern for me is, you know, the privacy, um, the controllability, from somebody that has access to this technology. So if, you know, if we are embedding ourselves with this technology, that, you know, can theoretically enhance our lives in some way, you know, um, understanding kind of where they're trying to take the next version of the internet as far as the metaverse, and kind of this one system, this one kind of global cloud metaverse, you know, super artificial intelligent computer. Like they want the metaverse, all of these things, and that, you know, that's a whole other thing, is this metaverse and all that. But um, understanding that they want kind of everything connected into this centralized artificial intelligence is concerning for me, you know, um, because I also, you know, humans could still have access to possibly manipulate that artificial intelligence algorithm. And so if we're all connected to, you know, this system, it's a, you know, for me, the first major red flag is, you know, could they possibly access and affect and possibly hack human beings? And you know, after watching a lot of these videos, for me, where I'm at, I do believe that they definitely will have that capability if, you know, if the world keeps playing out the way it does. But I also think that it's very, very likely that they have that ability right now, which kind of, I don't want to deviate too far, but I would like to at some point talk about targeted individuals a little bit, because that kind of plays into the whole, you know, how do they test out this technology? Um, um, let me just let me point this one more thing out. So when you think about like the this technology, so there's multiple functions of it, right? So it can be used for health and healthcare, it can be used for just individuals. But right now, the way it's being developed is really major is through the military. So the military is, you know, trying to keep up with China and Russia and these other countries that are developing this technology, these, you know, transcranial devices where they're hooking up soldiers to, you know, um, technology systems. They're putting Neuralink type devices into soldiers, and they are developing this technology. They're the major ones who are kind of pioneering all of this stuff, and it's all in the name of, you know, defense, national defense. We've got to keep up with China because they're doing it. We got to keep up with Russia because they're doing it. And so when you real and when you could actually watch some of these videos and understand the type of technology that they're developing, and when you understand how they can use it as a weapon, for me that major red flag is, okay, if they can use it for a weapon, you know, and then now that they're saying that we can use it, you know, just to kind of enhance our lives, um, well, how do we know that they're not going to use it for a weapon, you know? And so that's the major red flag for me. um, is, you know, just the ability for them to be able to access you, you know. And there's even things, I don't want to go too deep into that, but there's even there it's very likely that they can do that even without implanting devices, that they can in many ways, you know, access, um, And it's heavy. It's very heavy stuff, and honestly, it sounds crazy. But that's obviously one of the major red flags.
Yeah, jump into it. I'm curious to hear your insights on that.
Yeah, I don't know if let's see. Can I maybe share? How do you share documents on here? There's a couple. There's a guy named Dr. James. I'm not even sure exactly how you say his last name. It's either Giordano or Giordano, Giordano. But he's a professor at Georgetown. He also works with DARPA, so he's in high level, military government experiments, secretive experiments. But there's videos on YouTube you can just access of him talking to military officers about this technology. And when you hear the things that are available that they're working on and that they are talking about that they can use in war, it definitely, it's scary, because to think that they're talking about accessing people's brains and being able to affect populations and, in a military sense. But you also got to think that, there's rogue scientists out there. There's all kinds of different corporate, high level, deep, secretive corporate entities out there as well that are probably dabbling into a lot of this stuff. So it's there's a lot you can find definitely on the militarization of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I could, in my own opinion, I think that social media has already been weaponized. For example, the TikTok trends, I think it was iHypocrite. He did a really great breakdown that in 2019, all of these adolescent young girls were going to the doctor saying that they had Tourette syndrome, and that they had all these tics and it came out of nowhere. And it was like this huge spike. And it was just something that was so unnatural. And then the doctors started looking into it and doing research. And turns out there were TikTok videos that were trending where there's just people that have Tourette's or people that have, DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. And they have all of these multiple personalities. And that's a disorder that's very rare. It's like a very complex trauma that impacts people that makes that come out. But all of a sudden, all of these masses of people, so almost, through suggestion or through, people are very impressionable. So just by having someone that's influential be targeting, like whether consciously or unconsciously targeting youth, teenagers, children in some type of, whether it's a grooming process or desensitizing people to this type of mentality or lifestyle, it can really impact a person's behavior, their health, and how else. I mean, what a great way to go and impact a society and make sure that a society has a ton more issues than it really needs by just making TikTok videos. Like no one has to die. There's no blood. There's no battlefield. It's the battlefield of the mind. So, and I don't know how many, what if it's government funded or if it's just individuals who are ignorant and just, don't know how they're impacting others. It's wild. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but I've just, I've thought about that before. Like this, I really feel like there are elements to social media that are already weaponized, and that's just one form of technology.
Yeah, well said. I mean, definitely all of these technologies, the internets can be used as a weapon. Social media can be used as a weapon. That's the thing, is, as with a lot of these other technologies as well, that they all can have multiple uses, and so they can justify them through the military. They can justify them through healthcare. Just trying to make everybody's health better. But yeah, I definitely would agree with you. I think that they are definitely using, you know, it's a good question as to are they doing it willingly? Are there people knowingly, manipulating teens and trying to get them sucked into these digital worlds and these digital, social media platforms? And I don't know. I think that they obviously know what's going on. So I guess that, yeah, they're complicit in some ways as knowing that there's negative effects.
Yeah, I think the red flags for myself is, if we look at technology, right? I mean, I remember growing up, I was the age where when the internet came out and it was accessible, you had the dial up, right? And now it's jumped so incredibly far, and I think about, so I have my grandmother, she's 100 years old, right? And I asked her about her life and what it was like. And she would tell me that two people at her high school had cars, right? Like back in when she was going to high school. And so I remember when it was only a few people that had cell phones, and I just feel like, I remember I had a great grandfather who rode a horse to school, and so I just think that all of us who are now adults, who have kind of grown up with technology, but it wasn't always a part of our lives, we're going to be a part of that population that is just so blown away. Like my grandmother, it's difficult for her to use an iPhone, right? Like she doesn't get the touchscreen technology. And I imagine, like, I have children, so my children, when they're adults, what that technology is going to look like. And it's just going to be such quantum leaps in the acceleration and the sophistication of how this stuff is going to develop. And just looking at what it has done to our world thus far, just looking at America in general, our country is so divided. And it seems to me that this divide, I've looked back on different graphs. I've covered a lot of riots and protests and things like that. And protest did not get this out of control until I think it was like 2012 or something like that, when it started to get really big. Occupy was a really big one. And then from there, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then we had Antifa takeovers or whatever, So it's like, it's just become a more hostile political environment. That to me goes along with the development of social media and technologies and how we're interacting with each other and the algorithms. And so when I hear people with the World Economic Forum or, I hope I'm saying that right, the WHO and all these other places, for me, if we can see the work that they've already done, right, and how much of a dystopia we're already living in. When the internet came out, it was like this Wild West. For me personally, it was this space that had endless potential. And then the world started to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and there was more regulation and more rules, and now we're dealing with the censorship. And so it just really feels like those days of, this internet is something that, or the technology that we have is something that's going to liberate us, and it's this utopian world, and oh my gosh, it's going to just make the world such a better place. My mother is a school teacher, and she has children who don't know what bark is on a tree, like legitimately first graders, where she went and took them on a nature walk, and she's like, okay, now it's time to find some bark. And these kids had no idea what that was, like literally bark on a tree. And so I just, for me, when we talk about those red flags, nothing is replace the natural world. Nothing is ever going to replace human, one-on-one dynamics. We look at depression, the suicide rates, the isolation. I think it's the most isolated group, the most loneliest population is millennials. And you would think that it would be these older adults that are retired or living in retirement homes or whatever. It's the millennials that have no true social connection, and nothing's going to be able to replace that. Not the metaverse, not transhumanism. I don't see anything being able to replace the natural world for what it is. So that for me, just looking at the division and the lack of connection and the lack of understanding for the natural world around us, it seems pretty terrifying to think about what direction we're going in the future for myself personally.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point about, kind of the natural world, the biological world, because, they talk a big game, and this is what's kind of weird for me. I haven't quite figured out exactly, I don't know exactly their full, what they're exactly trying to do. That's what we're all trying to do, is put the pieces together, kind of, right? But um, they talk a big game about the natural world, like they're, climate change. They're trying to, institute of this new green um, energy system, global system, all this stuff. But at the same time, here they're driving us into these digital worlds, and like they're not really getting us to wanting us to experience nature, right? It seems that they're if they really loved nature that much and loved all of humanity that much, then why wouldn't they um, you know do kind of have more of a natural biological system that they're trying to build. Instead, they're here they are, they're building this technological world that's almost seems that they're, in many ways, I mean, when you talk about the genetic engineering stuff, I mean, they can even genetically modify and engineer basically anything on the planet. So I mean, they could genetically engineer trees. So it's like they're almost trying to build this you know, um, anti-biological natural world. Like they're trying to rival. It's like the rival of the natural world, in some ways, in my opinion, and how I see it. Because um, yeah, they are. I mean, they're building these new worlds. The metaverse, is basically us being able to go and experience the internet in like in virtual reality in like a 3D setting. So like if you're shopping online, you're going to be able to go into a 3D store, and you're going to be able to. It's going to be like you're in there, um, and that's how you'll shop in the future. And so they're driving us into these digital worlds, and in many ways, it is attracting to a lot of these younger kids. And in many ways, there is a draw to it in some way, but then when you come back to that, like the natural world, it's in all those things that you just talked about, how it is just it's breaking us up. It's dividing us up. There's depression, and all of these things that you talked about. These the technologies does seem to be possibly impacting a lot of those things. So is the world really improving with technology? That's an interesting question. I like being able to have conversations with people. Hey, this is awesome, but um, at the same time, I probably spend too much time on technology, So is it making my life better? I don't know. Is it making me happier? I'm not sure. So, I think that whole idea, the kind of they do seem to be trying to push us towards a path that is digital, into these digital worlds, rather than really interacting in our physical world. And it's happened already. Just like you said, the kid didn't even know what bark was. He probably sits inside and plays video games all day. He's playing his PS4 or his Xbox all day. And so
yeah, that was highly disturbing for me to hear when my mom and I were discussing that. Because my mom, she's a really interesting lady, and she works with autistic kids, but also children who have some type of developmental issues. And it's really interesting because we have a lot of discussions in regards to are children of this generation not developing correctly because they spend so much time on technology, because they have such a lack of interaction with the natural world around them or in their own relationships. You know, I mean, if a kid's on, you know, when the schools were all on lockdown, they're spending, what, 8 hours on their computer, looking at a teacher on a screen, and then they get off and they spend another 4 hours watching their movies or whatever. They're not actually having discussions. People aren't making eye contact with them. They're not having any type of tactile experience with the world around them. And that is such a huge part of child development. You know, they need to be interacting with the world on a very physical level to help them develop. And so I do not see technology being able to come in, or any type of 3D, 4D, 5D world being able to replace, you know, going outside, interacting with different tools, different, you know, I don't see it happening really for myself personally. That's just my opinion. But so let's go into a little bit of this, the Build Back Better and the Great Reset and how this is all connected. What do you think is their intention behind all of this? Because, you know, 2020, it really felt like the world shifted. You know, I mean, people started each other differently. It was just, you know, and even now, things haven't gone back to normal. I don't think they'll ever go back to normal. So what does this Build Back Better and Great Reset agenda, what's the intention behind it, and who are some of the people and some of the countries that are involved?
All right. So the Build Back Better, that whole name, you know, Biden, you know, he acts like it's something that he came up with, but it was originally created by the United Nations in 2018. I have a thread on that, but it was created for mainly not for like a global situation like we're in now, but for like a regional, kind of more a local situation where there's a natural disaster that comes through, you know, whether it be a hurricane or whatever. And, you know, after that, this Build Back Better plan is kind of just this United Nations initiative that says, hey, instead of just kind of building things back to where they were, we need to make sure we're updating, you know, all of our systems with new technology. And so it was just kind of this framework, you know, it's obviously goes a lot deeper than that. But so what's happening now is unique in that it is a global Build Back Better thing that's happening. That this is happening globally. That's why you see, you know, I think most of us have seen the YouTube videos and the clips of all the people saying Build Back Better, you know, all these politicians and, you know, global elites from all over the world that are saying the same thing. It's because this is the global, it's a global Build Back Better plan that was created by the United Nations. And so the United Nations is definitely interconnected in all of this. So the World Economic Forum and the United Nations partnered. And, you know, you can find that on the internet. They partnered together in 2019. So the World Economic Forum said that they were going to basically help the United Nations meet their 2030 sustainable development goals that they've set. You know, these goals that they're trying to, the climate change stuff, and trying to change the world, you know, for the climate, all of that. So the World Economic Forum partnered with the United Nations, and so they are involved right in all of this. It's kind of they're the double-headed snake there, in my opinion, because the World Economic Forum is made up of it, you know, of these global corporations. There's, you know, over 1,000 global corporations that fund the World Economic Forum. And so when you talk about the World Economic Forum, we're not just talking about, it is Klaus Schwab. They've all kind of bought into his vision of the world. And so a lot of this does come from him. This Build Back Better plan, the Great Reset, is Build Back Better. We're resetting the world. We're building back better, resetting. Same thing. Um, and the fourth industrial revolution is kind of the act of rolling out all of this new technology. And so what they're trying to do now is they're using COVID as this global Build Back Better um, initiative. And so this is, I mean, you want to talk about New World Order, all that stuff. It literally is. I mean, um, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's not. I mean, it's like it's gotten to the point now where they knew all these things that people talked about used to, the Bilderberg meetings and all these secretive elite meetings and stuff. People were, speculating on all this stuff, talking about these New World Order plans. Well, it's like they knew they had to bring it out into the open, in my opinion, and they had to try and make it seem enticing. And they have to make it seem like they are really trying to build this utopia. Um, and so that's kind of where we're at. It is, over the course of this next decade, we're at the very beginning of this. And so the 2030 is kind of their goal of trying to have this new system in place. And when I say new system, what that means is, artificial intelligence is and machine learning, and which is kind of they're interconnected, is one of the major foundations of it. But it's in this fourth industrial revolution, this Build Back Better stuff, this technology is what we're seeing being rolled out now. So there's a healthcare aspect to this, that there's just a regular economic, there's multiple. What I'm saying is there's multiple sectors to all of this, right? So the health care aspect of it is one of the major aspects, and that's kind of what we're seeing being rolled out now. Like the mRNA vaccine it's brand new technology, and so this is kind of the first stages of it, and they're already developing DNA vaccines, and that's just going to kind of lead us down this path of gene editing and genomic um, editing and all that. Um, does that answer the question?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you highlight that they had to bring it out in the open, right? I think that there were some really incredible journalists that went to like the G7 events and some of these other things. I'm pretty sure Luke Rosowski was one of them. Dan Dix, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was one of the journalists that went there, and I'm pretty sure Tim Pool also did some coverage. And it was, I think, maybe like 2017 or something. And they went in and they were, looking at the event and all of these different people that were going in there. And it caused such an uproar within the, as you could say, like in quotation, the conspiracy circles, right? And they were seen as these dark and shadowy figures, who had these, they were conspiring against the people of the world. And it's so interesting because they even mentioned that. I don't know if you remember, it's one video that's on one of your threads. And, it's talking about the Build Back Better plan. And they're like, this isn't a conspiracy theory. And, like they're actually using these like key words. Do you know the video I'm talking about?
I'm not sure. The one to say that it's not a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, they really they hit all of these different key points. I wish I could find it and share it with everybody, but it's just like, wow, they're really trying to make themselves look good right now, and like they're not the enemy, I think it's one of your first videos. I'm looking right now to see if I can find it. I don't know. But it was just so interesting to me to watch that. And just see, like, they're trying to paint themselves in this, like, they're humanitarian and they want the best for everyone. And, this is just going to be great for the world. And it's just like, man, these people, they really do for me, it breaks down to a lot of these people believe that utopia can be found on this earth. You know, like we can make this world a beautiful and amazing and happy place, and they forget about human nature, right? And in my opinion, human nature is fundamentally flawed. It's always been flawed. There's always going to be issues, whether it's brother against brother, tribe against tribe. You know, there's always going to be some type of conflict, and people overcome it, and just elements of human nature that you can't erase through technology or some type of dream of what the world could be. And I find a lot of that utopian thinking happens a lot in leftist communities, or the progressive spaces where, they really just want to fight the power because there's so much corruption. And if we just take down this one person, the world's going to just, be this peaceful, amazing place. And for me, that's just not really how it works, sadly to say, but it's interesting that you say that they had to bring it to light, and I think there's a tipping point where there was just so much leaked information or so much different coverage by those journalists that I mentioned, that they did have to come out into the open and say, hey, here's what we're planning, here's what's the agenda, here's the direction we're trying to take. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts or insights on what brought them out of the shadows?
Well, I think, in order to, you think about trying to reset a whole global system or usher in some kind of new global system, if how are you going to do that? Are you going to do it? You got to have something's got to happen to shift everybody's thinking. I'm trying to think of a better way to say it, but I think that there's, in order for them to bring in what they wanted. I really don't know how else to say it other than they had to bring it to, hey, here, just bring it to the light, as in and make it seem like this is going to be better for the world. And I think that there are some of these people that really do. I think that there's obviously evil ones in this, but I think that there's probably some genuine people that just, are kind of deceived by it, that are kind of going along with it as well, and think that this, could be, the best route for the world, for the next evolution of humans. So I think there are some that, I don't know if you want to get into kind of the occult spiritual aspect of all of this, but I think that there are some that are pretty deep into some dark occult, practices and stuff. So I think that there is an evil in this, but I think that there's, obviously some probably decent people that have just gotten caught up in it, that think it is better for the world. This is the best route. So I don't, I kind of lost my train of thought there of what your question was.
I'm curious in regards to the people that, do you know of any names or specifics of people who are into the occult or things of that nature? Can you kind of connect that to the bigger picture? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's that's a difficult part to you kind of have to break it down just based off of their worldview, and just figure out their worldview based on their how they talk in their when they do speeches or when they do discussions and talks. These speaking of the high level elites, a lot of these that are out doing the rounds of different talks at universities and stuff. You can kind of get an understanding of at least how do they view the world. But so that it is difficult to say, and that's why I don't like to get too deep into it with, posting a whole lot about it, because it is there is kind of some just uh, subjectiveness in it. Um, but yeah, just kind of following. I don't know if you've seen my. I did a thread on George Washington talking about the Illuminati, which I used to think of the Illuminati as just kind of this made up term of talking about this all these elites or these families or whatever that are conspiring and trying to bring about this one world government. But there's actually a letter in the Library of Congress where George Washington talks about the Illuminati, and there's actually somebody had sent him a letter asking if he knew of the Illuminati and if they had infiltrated Freemasonry in America. So there is a Freemason aspect to all of this. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but um, so that it all kind of ties back to these ancient mystery schools. Even the Egyptian and Babylonian, all these different ancient mystery schools. There's this hidden knowledge, and so this thing exists in a lot of these elite circles, and that's pretty widely um, known. And there's a lot of people that and I'm kind of the opinion that I don't necessarily think that everybody that follows some occult tradition is evil. There's an interesting guy he's got a YouTube channel, but he's got a bunch of books. His name is Leo Zagami, and he's an Italian. And he was born into like this very elite family. And they were Catholic, but they were involved in kind of these secret societies. And so anyways, he has gotten out of it, and he says he's an interesting guy. He's worth checking out, but he is still like a Freemason, and he believes that true Freemasonry is is seeks to better the world, and that there's an evil that has kind of taken it over. And so a lot of it is just a lot of these occult science. It's occult science, which you're diving deep into these very esoteric sciences, but a lot of it has led to the current technologies that we have today. So a lot of these the old scientists, even Tesla. I don't know if you've heard anything about him. He was contacting aliens and stuff, and so there's something weird going on, I guess, is the point, that a lot of these elite people that are involved in science and technology they're seeking certain type of knowledge, and they're seeking scientific and technological knowledge for specific purposes. And so I don't know how deep you want to go into all that, but there's, in my opinion, let me just say this one more thing on that I do think that there is a kind of this Freemason element to even the World Economic Forum, because it's the Freemasons kind of they view themselves as kind of like the architects, the engineers, the builders of the world. Like they have these certain skills that others don't, and that they take it upon themselves to build. They're building our world and kind of shaping our world. And when you look at the World Economic Forum's website and you go to their platforms and just scroll through that, it talks about how they're shaping every aspect of our lives. Basically, it has all these different categories: shaping the future of entertainment and sport, shaping the future of the new digital economy and all this stuff. But they're kind of this, they're building this new world, build back better, right? So there, in my opinion, I think that there is even kind of a Freemason aspect to it's just kind of embedded, and you can kind of see it in a lot of the ways that they talk. And so it's kind of, I don't know. So there is definitely a subjective element to it, but I am of the belief that they are involved in kind of this occult worldview that And I think they have a kind of a view of that they are trying to build this occult utopia. That their occult utopia is this digital. It is kind of the opposite of a traditional the traditional Christian perspective of like the new heaven and new earth or something like that. It's like in a biological sense or uh, I don't know. Um,
Yeah, no, it really is interesting to try to get into these people's headspace, like where are they at? How do they think about the world? How do they think about the people in it and their ideas and how much it's going to impact everything on an individual and societal scale? It's just, it is really interesting to think about those circles. And for me personally, it's we'll never truly know unless we're in that space. What we're never going to know fully. I mean, we can try to pick up on bits and pieces, like you were saying, in watching speeches or presentations and lectures and things of that nature. You can kind of see what angle they're coming from. Like, it was interesting. I can't remember. There's one video on one of your threads where a guy was talking about gender and how technology is going to help people with gender dysphoria decide what gender they are. And it's like obviously they're in a more progressive headspace in regards to the spectrum of gender and queer theory and things of that nature. So you can find little bits and pieces of where they might be coming from, but unless you're behind those closed doors, who knows? But I really appreciate your insights. We have about 4 more minutes until I personally have to log off here, and I'm wondering if any of the listeners have any questions or any comments that they would like to ask or share in this space, and if not, we can just kind of close it up. I'm curious, in regards to your research, is this a path that you're really going to pursue? I'm just interested with your work and, what's driving you, your motivation. What's your long-term vision for collecting all this data and breaking it down for everyone?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I have a full-time job. This is something I do and pretty much in all my spare time. Got three little kids and a wife, and so my time is definitely thin. But man, I am absolutely obsessed with this, kind of looking into this stuff because I do feel we are living, in the greatest moment in history. It is this is something wild's going on. I think we can all kind of sense that that something historical is happening, and so I'm just trying to find truth, and so I'm motivated by just trying to find truth and trying to be as objective as possible and trying to think about things in multiple ways and trying to understand both perspective and many perspectives, and really trying to find truth, as much as possible. Like you said, we don't know exactly fully what's going on, but as things kind of are unraveling, and I do think this next decade is going to be monumental. I mean, this is the next decade is when this shift is. They are shifting the world over the course of this next decade, and so we're in the beginning stages of this shift right now. But 2030, is definitely their goal to kind of have this new global system in place. And so I'm motivated by I'm motivated by my kids, and my family, and just thinking about humanity in general. And Klaus Schwab talked about in one of this papers that I read, he talked about how algorithms will be able to, or AI will be able to create music for us better than we can create. And I'm like, what kind of world is that? Do I really want to live in this kind of world where artificial intelligence is you know, running our lives and governing us and giving us everything we want or need. You know, it's just it doesn't seem like a world that I want to live in. And you know, I definitely obviously don't trust these people that are trying to implement this system. And so I definitely I have a vision of trying to create a community. I love this kind of stuff. Doing these kind of talks and discussions, and I want to try and build like a little community of people that enjoy these types of topics um, and really dive in deep and do these kind of talks with different people in the community. You know, just because everybody's got a different perspective, everybody's kind of got a different understanding of different topics. Um, and so I think that the more we can kind of bring together different viewpoints and different people with just kind of different pieces of the puzzle, you know, the more we can kind of all, you know, talk and engage and try and understand what's going on, you know, I think that the more we're going to be able to know how to possibly fight back and you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible to win at this point. You know, I do think that this narrative is breaking down. It's going to get interesting. You know, but you know, so but that's kind of what motivates me. Definitely family and just thinking about like what we talked about the biological world, and it seems like we're heading in a different direction. You know, that it's going to take us into digital worlds, and I don't see that as a world I want to live in.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation tonight. I'm with you on just really enjoying having discussions, going into these topics, doing deep dives. And I think it's important, you know, I really like this format because people can join, they can listen, people can share. And it's so much, there's so much more depth to it than just, you know, a quick 160 character tweet, you know, where you can really dive in and hear where a person's coming from and get new insights. So I really appreciate you taking the time this evening to join this space and have these conversations. And I'd love to have another one in the future sometime. And thank you everyone so much for joining in and listening. And yeah, we'll see where the future goes. You know, I mean, like you said, it's like, it doesn't feel like there's really going to be a winning side in regards to the people because this agenda is so set and there's so much power behind it. But at the end of the day, we do have an obligation to speculate and have these conversations and be informed on what is going on in the world and not just go with the flow and whatever is handed to us, we take it. You know, it's like we have to look at the world in a critical way. So any time that someone's willing and able to have a critical and in-depth conversation, I'm much appreciative towards that. And once again, thank you so much for joining the space this evening.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out and putting this together. I enjoyed it. We definitely need to do it again.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And it'd be great to get some other people, some other speakers.
Get some other people involved.
You know, and just get even more opinions and perspectives. Because like you said, everyone's coming from a different space.
Right.
You know, and everyone has different, you know, niches that they go into. And so it's very interesting. So thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoys their evening and I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. Please, if you don't already, follow Peasant Journalist. He's got interesting, incredible, informative stuff. So definitely check out his work. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Have a good one. Good night.
You too. Good night. Bye.